3 episodes in, and House of the Dragon is already promising to be everything that fans expected from its predecessor, with new twists and turns in the Targaryen family history as they battle it out for the Iron Throne. House of the Dragon is a show that dives deep into the lore of Game of Thrones and gives us brand new characters to root for and a brand new premise to follow. With the premiere garnering around 10 million users, the ratings for House of the Dragon only get better with every new episode. But even with all this success, the showrunner of the Game of Thrones prequel decided to jump ship right when things are picking up. So, what happened that made director Miguel Sapochnik step down? Stay tuned till the end of this video for all of this and more. A fiery start. House of the Dragon is a prequel that takes place nearly 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones, and with the first 3 episodes available to stream, what we do know about the show is that it's going to cover about 3 decades of the history of Westeros, primarily focusing on the Targaryen household as the catalyst to all that went down in the main show. Making use of time jumps, the show is going to take us through the bloody and sometimes incestuous history of the Targaryen clan as we finally get the answers to some burning questions ever since that disappointing finale of Game of Thrones aired. Based on George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood series, the timeline of the show takes us through a turbulent period in history, with the primary conflict of the show being the issue of who is going to succeed on the Iron Throne. With several factions and members of the Targaryen family going up against the title, the family breaks out into a civil war that we know as the infamous Dance of the Dragons, leading to half of the Targaryen family tree being wiped out. The show starts somewhere around 101 AC with King Viserys as king. And while the first season is only expected to show us a gradual build-up to the war that everyone has been talking about since Game of Thrones. But if you want to see some bloodshed, you'll have to wait until Season 2 because that's when it all truly kicks off. Season 2 is bound to be different. While the first season of the show has barely begun, fans already know what to expect from Season 2. But what they weren't expecting was for co-showrunner and director Miguel Sapochnik to back down from his position after spending years producing the show from scratch. As House of the Dragon makes history as one of the biggest shows of recent times, it was almost instantly renewed for a second season. And while that is huge news for cast and crew, the announcement was followed up by the unfortunate news of Sapochnik deciding to let someone else take the reins of the entire project. Now, anyone who has been an avid fan of Game of Thrones series knows that the director has worked on some of the most successful episodes of the original show, including Battle of the Bastards. The director actually won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Director for a Drama Series with Battle of the Bastards and was recognized as one of the greatest storytellers of modern times. And while the last season of Game of Thrones was subject to a lot of controversies, the only saving grace of it all was Sapochnik and all the episodes that he directed. So naturally, all this considered, House of the Dragon was in safe hands when it was announced that Sapochnik himself was going to be taking over. But sadly, it looks like we're all in for a disappointment since Sapochnik recently made the shocking announcement of his departure from the show. After serving as a co-runner for the show's first season alongside Ryan Condal, the director just doesn't have it in him to take it forward. According to Sapochnik, he's given 3 years of his life to House of the Dragon, working on development and production, and while he's still on board as an executive producer of the show, he thinks that his work of the storyteller has come to a close, saying goodbye again and again. Because House of the Dragon is going to span 28 years in the first season, the show has hired multiple different actors for different characters, and as time passes, the younger actors have to be replaced by the older ones to show the passage of time. Just 3 episodes in, and we only have 2 more left with Millie Alcock portraying her iconic role of Princess Rhaenyra before she's replaced by Emma D'Arcy in a future timeline. Other characters, including all the young actors, will also be replaced with older-looking versions of themselves as everyone anticipates just how important it is to have the right cast to show the passing of time over the years, even if that means leaving most of the current cast behind. Is there some tension in the air? Sapochnik's sudden decision to leave the show came as a surprise to everyone. And naturally, it also led to a bunch of rumors where people believed that the showrunner was actually fired. Why? Well, how else do you explain why he would just decide to pull out of what is on its way to becoming the most successful show of all time? However, as HBO and Sapochnik himself put it, it was just time for the showrunner to move on to different projects. And hey, it's not like he's leaving for good, right? He's still going to be overseeing the whole thing. HBO thanked Sapochnik for bringing the vision of House of Dragon to life. The network appreciated Miguel for helping the show achieve its signature look, saying that without him, the story would have never come together the way that it did. For now, Sapochnik has just signed a first-look deal with HBO, and that gives him the chance to work on new projects and look after the production of House of the Dragon to make sure that the show remains aligned with his original vision. Replacing the Prodigy. So now that Sapochnik has officially left the building, who's going to replace him? And will his replacement do justice to the show that has been Sapochnik's baby for about 3 years now? Well, let's just say that you'll be happy to hear that House of the Dragon has made sure to stay true to its roots and has already hired another veteran from the main show, Alan Taylor, to come on board for Season 2 as director for multiple episodes. Taylor's also going to be coming on board as an executive producer, and his already existing long-term relationship with HBO only guarantees the fact that there is no better man to take Sapochnik's legacy forward. The former showrunner himself went on the record to say how happy he was for Alan to be replacing him. He is someone I've known and respected for a long time, and I believe this precious series could not be in safer hands, said Sapochnik when asked if he was happy with HBO's decision to hire Taylor. As far as Alan himself goes, the director said that it's his honor to be back at HBO, this time working with the origin story of the Targaryen family. Together, he and Ryan Condal will continue to give the fans a stellar visual experience while making sure that the story of the show stays true to the source material. All in all, Alan is excited to return back to the fascinating world of Westeros and is all ready to take up the challenge of heading a show as big as House of the Dragon. Steve Toussaint upset over Sapochnik leaving. Ever since the news of Sapochnik abandoning ship has come forward, people are now wondering what exactly went on behind the scenes. So to give you a little glimpse, let's talk about when one of the show's actors, Steve Toussaint, who plays the role of Corlys Velaryon, went on the West of Westeros podcast and spoke of how he was extremely sad to see Sapochnik leave. The actor did go on the record to say that he understands how hard it might have been for the man to call it quits, but to prioritize his mental health and make up for all the fatigue that he had started experiencing while working on this project nonstop. According to the actor's wife, Toussaint was actually incredibly upset because House of the Dragon was essentially going to be losing its artistic vision. However, everyone agrees that taking a break from working on one thing for days on end tends to get exhausting. He's got to take a long break and recharge himself and decide what else he wants to do. I think the world's his oyster because he's so incredibly talented, said Toussaint while bidding farewell to Sapochnik. Is Sapochnik's exit a good thing? With all this said and done, there's a second narrative that's emerging out of the depths of the internet. People actually believe that the showrunner calling it quits with House of the Dragon might actually be a pretty great decision. Why? Well, because of what happened with D&D by the end of the original show. In its last few episodes, Game of Thrones just doesn't have the kind of grit and storytelling that the show is known for. And most fans believe that the reason why this was such an issue was that the showrunners had exhausted themselves to a point where they just didn't care. So if Sapochnik claims that he has been completely drained after producing the show, building all the characters, setting up the world, and then the story, it's only fair for the man to take a break and be honest to the production. When he thought he couldn't do it, Sapochnik decided to move to the side, with Condal taking the lead and working alongside George R.R. Martin to help the creative process. This has led the fans to believe that House of the Dragon will not suffer the same fate as its predecessor. And while it's true that Sapochnik has made a big exit, he's still going to be working closely with Alan Taylor and Ryan Condal, coming in to offer help with the big fights and confrontation sequences that he's so well known for, and for good reason. With the third episode being released, House of the Dragon continues to bring in more and more viewers, with the third episode going beyond 16 million views. This pacing is pretty similar to the viewing patterns of the first 2 episodes of the show, so let's just say that we're establishing another pattern here. The future of House of the Dragon. All in all, it sounds like House of the Dragon has begun on the right note. However, that does lead to a lot of questions about the show's trajectory. Most people also remember Game of Thrones having stunning visuals and a story that would make you think for days on end. However, the 17 million people that tuned into the finale of the show left disappointed with unresolved questions, unaddressed mysteries, and of course, the many plot holes that could have easily disrupted the entire narrative if fans had noticed enough. So why trust House of the Dragon? People actually believe that the negative association with the original show's ending would affect any spin-offs. It seems like House of the Dragon has successfully managed to navigate that route and is now on its way to garner just as much, if not more, of a cult following than the original show. How do you think the show is bound to change now that Sapochnik has decided to take a back seat? I guess we'll have to wait for the second season before seeing any polls on this question. And that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, The Focus, for more movie-related news. Until then, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.